Hello everyone. In this tutorial, I'm looking at the ways in which you can improve a basic prompt library. You're looking at my example prompt library that I have created inside Google Spreadsheets. And we're on the sheet called Master Prompts. Now, I've begun to develop these today to help me in refining how my ancestral storytelling and writing should proceed with the help from my AI tools. And you'll notice that I have segments that would be included in the questions that the AI tool would ask me. And I've done these inside ChatGPT. So I posed that question. What questions would you ask me if I requested your help in scoping my next ancestral story? And it came up with these 5 settings: the foundational story scope, the family dynamics and voices, setting and historical texture, material and storytelling readiness, and finally, legacy and reflection. Quite a number of questions there. You won't need to ask them all, but each of these will give you a different direction for how to go about writing your story. So, for example, under foundational story scope, these questions: whose story are we telling and why now? What draws you to this ancestor at this moment in your journey? What's the emotional heartbeat of the story? What period or theme will anchor the narrative? So several questions there and some examples that might be relevant to your story. And then similarly for family dynamics and the other columns of questions. So with these in mind, I thought I wanted to use this to develop my next story. So I'm going over now to ChatGPT. And here's the beginning of the conversation where I've asked it to help me in scoping my next ancestral story and asking Chat, what questions would he ask me? And it came up with 12 discovery questions, which are going to help me shape my storytelling style. And here they are. As you saw before, this is where I have now included those into my prompt template or my prompt library. So here's all the 12. And you've seen those before. Chat is always very helpful in giving me extra ideas. Would I like to co-create a strong story map, develop a chapter list, or an opening scene to match? But I wanted to tease out a little bit more before we started the writing process. So I had this story in mind with some details that I've gathered about an ancestor whose name was Samuel Goodman. He was an innkeeper in the 1830s in rural England. And I've put in place the notes that I'd already gathered about him. I've just put it all in place as part of the prompt. So it's now giving ChatGPT an idea of this person as a character. Quite lengthy. But what it's done now is given me some ways in which it will be able to tailor some questions for me to help build the story using 4 story building domains of character, context, family, and legacy. Now, this became really important at this stage because I could see where these questions would lead me in writing the story. So for character development, 4 questions. And these were designed to help shape his internal journey and narrative voice. I'm going to write the story or get AI to help me write his story in first person. The second part was about social and historical context. And we need this to anchor the story in its time and place. And so it's picked up on details that I've given it about where Samuel Goodman was the innkeeper, and talks about questions that he might ask me to fill in that historical and social context. Then a series of questions about family dynamics, brings in the rest of his family and the community. Number 4, legacy and reflection, is now for the emotional resonance and story closure. So a few questions here. And these will help shape the way in which I get the story organised. Then Chat has come up with an idea or two where it will say we could begin with a chapter structure based on the rhythm of a typical day at the inn, or a first-person monologue, or a contrasting scene of him farming versus him pouring ale. So then once again, it wants to know how I'd like to get it to help me write Samuel's chapters. By the way, these ending signatures are what I put in my preferences, so it knows to do that each time. So now I wanted to dig deeper into Samuel Goodman's life, and I've provided some documents about Samuel, including a family group sheet as a PDF and some writing that I put together, and some documents such as the census details. And with that, I've asked ChatGPT to now begin with a chapter structure and suggest chapter titles for 10 of these, and told it that I had the documents there to help set the scene. And it has gone ahead now and read those. You can tell this from this sentence here, that it's definitely read from the memoirs of a genealogist's ancestors. And then goes about the task of structuring the story into 10 compelling chapters. And these were based on balancing intimate family moments, the rhythm of the Oxford Arms, the inn, and echoes of broader societal change, which will draw the readers in, will give more interest to the story. So it's then gone ahead with suggested chapter titles and structure. The chapter title for 1 is The Farmer in the Tap Room, and the subtitle is From Allalee's Furrows to the Streets of Totnes, What Makes a Man Trade Soil for Ale. And that detail has come from the documentation that I've shared. Allalee is the name of the village where he was doing the farming, and Totnes is where he began to manage the inn. And you can see that it's done the same with each of the 10 chapters. So I read through all of these and they look pretty good, but I'm thinking ahead now. If I wanted to use this process and this strategy, this is going to mean a little too much work, given that I want to use this for several other ancestors. So rather than beginning to write that first chapter, I thought, let's condense it some way and get some better structure happening. So my next prompt was to tell ChatGPT that I thought these were suitable scenes rather than chapters. And given that I want the story to be about 1,500 words, I was suggesting that the chapters become scenes of about 300 words. And I wanted to remind Chat about the 12 discovery questions that will help shape my storytelling style. And then it came back with suggested chapter outlines for the story of Samuel Goodman from soil to cider. The target is 1,500 words. The structure is 5 chapters plus an introductory paragraph with 2 to 3 scenes of 300 words each. Perfect. I asked for first person, so it will be in first person reflective. grounded in place with gentle insight and warmth. And now it's divided up those previously set up chapters into scenes for just a few chapters. Chapter 1 is now when the soil stops speaking, and we have 3 scenes in which we will see Samuel recounting his days in Totnes, Harriet at the hearth, and some insights into moments of doubt and memory from Samuel. Then chapter 2 will be all about the Oxford Arms at number 7, and 2 scenes in there. So a walk through the rooms and routines, and also some stories, side stories about the lodges, the boarders, and ghosts. Hadn't thought about that. Because from the detailed documentation I've given to Chat, it knows that there were several lodges and boarders. It's come up with that whole idea of ghosts, but I quite like it. Chapter 3, In the Hands of My Children, 2 scenes there with his son Thomas and his daughter Alice. And then chapter 4, Down Oxford Lane, we're looking at 2 ends of the spectrum where we see one scene is down Oxford Lane, reflection on his neighbour, who happens to be his father-in-law, Samuel Allery. And then scene 2 is The Measure of the Man, where Samuel defines legacy, not by money, but decency. Boots by the door and rooms full of memory. That's a great phrase. Chapter 5, called Last Orders, which is ideal for an innkeeper. 2 scenes here, a quiet evening at the inn, bringing in Harriet, and the second scene, a message for the great-grandchildren. So this is now shaping up to be a much better story. And Chat has done exactly what I've asked. It's come back with the questions that I would now need to answer in order to get this first chapter on the way. What emotional tone? Would you like occasional humour? What values from Samuel? Do you want to reference real dates? And how do you want the relationship with Harriet depicted? So then it's saying, once I answer those, I can begin drafting chapter 1 in full, with 2 to 3 scenes woven together seamlessly. So I did that. I looked at those 5 questions that Chat gave me and posed those answers. I want it to be proud and practical, include humour, his value of hard work and adaptability, use real dates where appropriate, show his steadfast loyalty for his wife Harriet, and then asked it to create chapter 1 in first person and use a separate downloadable document. This is important when you get to that point where you now want a separate document that you can download. And here it is below. So if I click into that, it will split the scene and you can see the conversation here on the left, and this is the finished article. So it's quite good. Some things that I would change, but it definitely does set the scene quite well. Now, there's one other thing that I need to show you, which is new in ChatGPT. I just noticed this today. Along the bottom of any conversation, the familiar copy, which I will do now just to copy that detail, there's a second icon that I hadn't noticed until today. Now, Quillbot is a very useful tool which will help you with editing your writing. Looks like they've now built that in here, so I'm keen to give it a try. Clicking into it brings us to Quillbot, as you can see on the left-hand side. And I do have an account with Quillbot, so it was able to open that up very quickly. You can get a premium account with it, of course. So what Quillbot is now doing is looking at the basic text that was written inside ChatGPT and then transforming it over here. And you've got different languages that you can use, so a typical style. So at the moment, it's English for Australia, and you can also do English for the United Kingdom. Click the Humanize button, and there it's making some suggested changes. There are other things to Quillbot that you might like to explore, things like grammar checker, AI detector, plagiarism checker, and so on, along with paraphraser. And with a premium account, you get different choices of your modes. This one is basic, you can have advanced, and there are others that you might like to try. So we've gone from ChatGPT over to Quillbot seamlessly. So that's a really useful tool to have. So all you want to do is click the Humanize with Quillbot. Coming back to the document itself, I now want to have a complete copy of that. So we use the copy function at the top. And then I might go across to my Google. I might do a new document and paste this story in place. So now I have that first part of the story as chapter 1, when the soil stopped speaking. And I can continue in this vein using various prompts and continue to ask ChatGPT to help write the story. So ChatGPT has come a long way. I used to prefer Claude for the writing process, but Chat can do a fine job as well. So let's try some of that by first going to your prompt library and putting in place some of these questions that you would ask your AI tool to ask you. You can make a copy of this page as it is now ready for you. I can share that with the copy link and I'll put it below this video. So thanks for watching and listening today. I hope that you'll have fun in creating your next storytelling for your ancestors.